see Heather McDonald, James O'Keefe, and Sheriff David Clark at Freedom Summit 2018. Get your tickets at freedomsummitchicago.com.
Dan and Sean from Elmwood Park in for Amy J this morning, and Melania Trump sat down for an exclusive interview with ABC News, following her around in Egypt and perhaps other places in Africa. I don't know what ABC News' schedule was, but Melania did grant a no questions barred interview, and this is going to be aired tomorrow night. But of course, to try and whip up interest in something other than Clinton Foundation Donor Zero, they have teased a couple of the Q&A sets between Melania and ABC. Melania asked what the most surprising thing about being First Lady has been.
It's sad to see that organizations and foundations I want to partner with choose not to because of administration. And I feel they choosing the politics over helping others.
Mm-hmm. You know, see, you're too young. You don't understand. I was a Bullwinkle fan. I keep waiting for him to come out of the background. I love it. Love it.
Okay. It was interesting because she was pressed on, well, give me an example of one of those organizations that won't help you even though you have the same objective because of the politics. And she's very restrained. I find her actually pretty shrewd politically in the sense of sort of knowing her position in this milieu of D.C. and American politics. And so she said, I'm not gonna call anybody out. They know who they are. Also, of course, not surprisingly, asked about the Me Too movement and really against the backdrop of the Kavanaugh confirmation and whether or not she stands with women. You know, one of those banal questions only a D.C. journalist could ask.
I support the women, and they need to be heard. We need to support them. And, also men, not just women.
Do you think men in the news that have been accused of sexual assault and sexual harassment have been treated unfairly?
We need to have a really hard evidence that, that if you're accused of something, show the evidence.
Some women might hear that and say, how could you say that, Mrs. Trump? You need to stand with women. What would you say?
I do stand with women, but we need to show the evidence. You cannot just say to somebody, I was, sexually assaulted or you did that to me, or because sometimes the media goes too far and the way they portray some stories, it's not correct. It's not right.
Yeah, and the way they don't portray other stories, examples of, I would say more than incivility on the left. That Minnesota teacher we talked about earlier in the week, Rosemount, Minnesota, who tweeted, so who's going to take one for the team and kill Kavanaugh?
Oh,
it's a great.
Did she tweet that, really?
Great school teacher. She was put on paid administrative leave.
Oh, well, you got to give her a pay.
She's now resigned. South Charlotte Middle School, on the marquee on their sign in front of the school, F. Kavanaugh on the marquee.
Oh, my word. And they spelled it out. They didn't just put F. Kavanaugh.
No, they spelled it out.
What a disgrace.
Somebody caught a picture of it. The school retweets with the letters taken down, the F. Kavanaugh taken down. That's fake news. It wasn't there. Unfortunately, other people had seen it and taken pictures as well. And, in fact, it was there, so the then fallback excuse, and potentially it's the case, was we left the sign unlocked and the letters were unlocked, and so somebody posted this, but it certainly wasn't the school or administrators who did it. But even if it wasn't the school or administrators, I mean, a culture that begets these reactions from adults, I mean, including Eric Holder, including Hillary Clinton.
Starting to think they're right, though, Dan, because maybe we are too civilized. Maybe we should go into school and grab the administrator by his hair and make him change it with his face.
You would fit in very well, apparently, at South Charlotte Middle School.
Now you can't leave.
All right, for more on the topic of civility, Melania's interview, her as a political asset for the president, we're pleased to be joined again by our friend David Drucker, who is a senior political correspondent for the Washington Examiner. David, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good to be here.
Why don't we start with Melania and just the decision at this time, 3.5 weeks out, to do this sort of open-ended, wide-ranging interview with ABC News and have the country hear from the First Lady?
Well, look, I think that Republicans believe they ended up on the right side of the Kavanaugh fight. I think that they're looking at Senate races. They're looking at an increase in Republican interest in the election. And I think it's fair to say that this was not just an open and shut case politically for either side, that means it wasn't an open and shut case for the Democratic Party. So I doubt that Melania Trump, the First Lady, was thinking all of these things when she sat for the interview. I think this was more about her and her first solo international trip and all of that. But look, I don't think anybody at the White House is going to be upset with what she had to say.
I have a question about your article. Top Republican groups split on how to save the House majority on your website, thewashingtonexaminer.com. I'm curious about this because I don't want to follow the path of the old establishment Republican. The problem is I'm seeing the minority who used to be called the Liberty Caucus capitulate to that old majority. Does someone like me have a chance that, in fact, the Republican Party will stop turning into the Democrat Party and stand for capitalism and principles, or am I just passé now?
I mean, you're kind of passé.
Right.
Look, I think that I think that the Republican Party continues to be populated by different factions of Republicans. Some are going to be Republicans on fiscal matters or national security matters or cultural issues. Some are going to be populists. Some are going to be sort of your old school small government, free trade capitalists. But look, I think right now there's just not that big of an appetite among Republicans for
principles,
really reducing the size and scope of government, except when it comes to regulatory reform and the kinds of regulations that impact various industries. I think what you've seen under Trump and you've seen in Congress is a lot of support to disentangle and to sort of untangle all of the regulations that had built up under Obama. But when it comes to reforming Medicare and Social Security and Medicaid, the real cost drivers in the government, and obviously as you've seen with attitudes on trade and how involved the government should be in the economy in that regard, that's just not where the sort of power base of the party is.
Right. There's no seeming appetite outside of outgoing Speaker Paul Ryan to talk about structural reform and entitlements, but there does seem to be energy, and this is pointed out by the president's op-ed in USA Today, to oppose sort of the full-on Democrat socialism that's being proposed by the other side. And so he takes up the Medicare for All, $32 billion, probably a lowball estimate, a gambit by Bernie Sanders and the socialists to formally have the government take over the health insurance market. And the president's decision to write that op-ed and take up that issue seems to indicate that he and maybe congressional Republicans do want to have that conversation about some form of capitalism that the Republicans support versus the full-on socialism where the energy on the left resides.
So I don't actually think that's what's going on. I think this is more of a cultural argument. I think it's more of a political cultural argument. I mean, the argument that Republicans are making is that government control of the healthcare system, i.e. Medicare for All, would destroy Medicare as we know it, which is a form of socialist medicine. Now, it's not government control of the entire healthcare system, and people pay in over the course of their life so that they can use Medicare once they're retired or of retirement age. But it is a form of government involvement in medicine. It actually, because Medicare has become so big and it's a big driver of drug costs and doctors and what they charge in hospitals. And so the argument isn't let's reduce the amount of government involvement in healthcare. It's let's protect the part of government involvement in healthcare that we all like and not do the kind of thing we don't like. So it's a sort of interesting. It could be a very effective political argument, by the way, but it's not quite the argument for a freer healthcare market beyond what we have now. It's just an argument not to muck up what everybody likes.
So in essence, what you're saying is the paradigm has shifted So when I say that the Democrat Party has been taken over by the Soviets, by the weather underground, and the Republican Party has morphed into a hybrid Democrat Party, am I wrong?
Well, it depends on the issue. I would say this, that would lend some credence to your view, although I don't fully subscribe to it, is let's take Obamacare as an example. So Obamacare was a massive political failure for Democrats in 2010 and 2014. They lost over the course of Obama's presidency about 1,000 seats, and Obamacare had, a lot to do with that. And yet, Obamacare has changed the conversation when it comes to what kind of health care Americans expect, because for the first time, what Obamacare did was make it illegal for an insurance company to make an economic decision and refuse coverage on the basis of pre-existing conditions. It made it illegal to install a lifetime cap, another form of a capitalist way of approaching how you provide insurance and the freedom for companies and individuals to form whatever contract they want. And now, even though Obamacare failed politically so much, Republicans are running around in every campaign, in every race, no matter how conservative, no matter how red, and promising that they support government protections for pre-existing conditions and lifetime caps.
That's right.
And so that what people expect out of healthcare is completely different and much more to the left than it was when Obama was elected.
All right, he is David Drucker, senior political correspondent for the Washington Examiner. David, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you.
And he joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.